Hassan, he's written a very authoritative biography of Tipu Sultan, and he says, the British have exaggerated all these crimes, they have villainized him, and the Muslim historians should not be taken at face value. Why would the British want to villainize him? Because they defeated and killed him. I mean, nobody was asking them for a justification for that. In fact, if they had to villainize someone, it had to be Hyder. Muslim historians should not be trusted. Kirmani and others who've written Nishane-e-Haidari and also Tipu's life, they should not be relied upon, because to exaggerate a good Muslim ruler, they said all this. So you can't trust British records, you can't trust Muslim records of the time, you can't even trust Tipu's own letters, his registers and so on. Then what do you trust?
According to this German missionary that you're talking about, 85,000 souls sent to Srirangapatnam and carrying out the former threat, forcible circumcision. 85,000 Kurgis were circumcised.
Yeah.
And on this auspicious day of circumcision,
He ascends the throne.
Mass. So on the basis of that, I mean that was the day that it happened.
And so he writes about this to the Shah Alam, who's the Mughal emperor, and says, look, I have done all this. I am the true, defender of the faith. So grant me the power of kingship. And the Mughal himself is powerless. He's under Mahadji Scindia, and so he's unable to do. He gives him some title, which is something, not worth its salt. Then he sends these letters all the way, emissaries to the Caliphate. And incidentally, the Delhi Sultanate, a lot of them did the same, whether it is the Tughlaqs, the Khiljis and Lodhis. For the legitimacy to rule over Hindustan, they sought sanction from the Caliph. It was only the Mughals who did away with that, and they said, we are good enough to rule without anyone's. But Tipu does the same that the Delhi Sultans did, and the Caliph actually sends that permission, and only after he gets that sanction, he calls himself the Padshah of Mysore and gets that big octagonal throne with a nice golden umbrella with the Huma bird on it and precious stones and rubies, all this commissioned. Sadly for him, he never got to ascend it, because by the time that was completed, he was already killed. So he never, some could say he was exaggerating his crimes to buttress a case for himself. But what sort of an exaggeration is this, one should ask then, that to be called a good Muslim ruler, you have to show the crimes that you commit. But your crimes are your virtues, and that says a lot about what Islamic kingship itself is, which a lot of these leftist historians, including Mohibul Hassan, has written in this book, which I counter him at several places. He doubts the number of Kurgis. He goes to the population saying, itna to the hi nahi, so how could he take so many? Which another historian, Gajendra Mehendale, he actually backtracks the population and says very much the population was maybe around 1 lakh, and out of which to say 80,000 or whatever were circumcised or killed is not an exaggeration. It could be very much possible.
And Coorg is a hill area.
Yeah.
You take the person down.
Yeah.
You pick up, while you're coming down, you pick up from the plains also, right? When you're taking them. It's not necessary Coorg bole to only Kodavas.
Yes.
I mean, the Kodavas might have been a 1 lakh population at that time, but there were others who were laborers in the things there. They were also part of it.
And
right?
how does the number matter? I mean, as I said,
exactly.
80,000, 90,000, 70,000. How does that make the crime any less? Even if there were 100, it was quite bad enough. So this wanton cruelty was always shown as a medallion, and that's why the letters that he writes. So when I said Mohibul Hassan, he's written a very authoritative biography of Tipu Sultan, and he says, the British have exaggerated all these crimes, they have villainized him, and the Muslim historians should not be taken at face value, because to show him as a savior of Islam and as a true Muslim ruler, they exaggerated the crimes. Now both these things, I mean, if you counter, why would the British want to villainize him? Because they defeated and killed him. I mean, nobody was asking them for a justification for that. In fact, if they had to villainize someone, it had to be Hyder, because it was Hyder who defeated them black and blue in every war. The first Anglo-Mysore war, he goes to the gates of Madras and makes the British sign such a humiliating treaty, and makes all these caricatures of the Madras British governor, licking his feet and all that. And these things go all the way back to London, create shockwaves in the British Parliament. The stock prices of the East India Company collapse. So he's created that sort of a spectre for them. And in the second Mysore War, you had the Battle of Polilur, where Tipu also played an important role, where Colonel Bailey, he's defeated. Hector Munro, who's the hero of the Battle of Plassey and Buxar, he literally throws his weapons into a tank in Kanchipuram and runs away to Madras to save his life. So the Treaty of Mangalore, as I said, which ended in such grandeur for Mysore. It was Hyder who led these successes.
Stop the British at Mangalore.
Correct. No, it ended, of course, with Tipu concluding that. But Hyder was the braver man. He humiliated them. But despite that, all the colonial authors, Wilkes, he credits him so much, says Hyder never made a single political mistake in these battles. Even Bowring, who was a commissioner later of Mysore, he writes that Hyder may be, feared, etc., but he's still respected by the Mysore population because of he didn't interfere in their personal lives or whatever. He had all these other lust for women, and which those who bore the brunt, I think they hated him, but rest of them didn't bother. But so all these other people, including Buchanan, so many others who've written, nobody has villainized Hyder as much as him. They all praise his strategy. On the other hand, the only two wars that Tipu fought with the British, the third Anglo-Mysore war and the last one, in the third he lost half his kingdom. He had to give a war indemnity of 3.5 crores, in lieu of which he had to give his two sons, Abdul Khalik and Muizuddin, as hostages. And in the last war, he actually died, literally in the midst of anonymously. So what is the need for the British to villainize him? Whom had they to justify? Of course, they commemorated it, as I said earlier, the paintings, then plays started coming on Tipu, in novels, The Moonstone and others, you have reference to Tipu. All that was there. But they were referring to his original letters, his own writings, his dream registers, these letters to the commanders, which when I read in Bangalore, those protests erupted. He's telling this, go and break this, circumcise the dead also, 4 lakh infidels in Calicut I have converted. He's gloating about this. So there you're not even accepting his own letters.
His own letters, yeah.
Muslim historians should not be, trusted. Kirmani and others who've written Nishane-Haidari and also Tipu's life, they should not be, relied upon, because to exaggerate a good Muslim ruler, they said all this. So that itself is problematic. That to show the virtues of a good Islamic ruler, you have to show crimes. Where crimes become virtue, Professor Mohibul Hassan, when he was alive, didn't he know that this is actually he's fighting a very weak case here? So you can't trust British records. You can't trust Muslim records of the time. You can't even trust Tipu's own letters, his registers and so on. Then what do you trust? Someone sitting in JNU and Aligarh and retrofitting this history to suit their, pernicious politics. Are they the people whom you have to rely upon?